Blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget Boise Music Festival coming up very, very soon, the 21st. It's going to be big time, big event, big artists, Pitbull, the Eli Young Band, Tone, Loc, Color Me Bad. An awesome day. We want you to be a part of it. For more information, go to KIDOTalkRadio.com. And don't forget Saturday, Idaho's largest garage sale will be there at Expo Idaho, beginning to the opening till about noon, but all day, every day. Check it out. It's one of the cool events in the Treasure Valley at Expo Idaho. Joining us now to talk a little bit about your money and the Chinese is Dr. Michael Busler, public policy analyst, economic expert, and professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. You can catch his work at Newsmax, The Hill, and townhall.com. Dr. Busler, welcome back. Good to have you with us here in Idaho. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, is it a pleasure talking about China and the stock market, sir?
Well, let me just say, in the short term, it's going to be some problems, but I believe in the long term, it will benefit all of us. So here's essentially the big picture of what's happening. President Trump gets into office, and he takes a look at every one of the trade agreements that the U.S. has with all of our trading partners. For whatever reason, every single one of them is slanted in favor of our trading partners and to the detriment of the U.S. For example, in the automobile industry, if they produce a car in Europe and sell it in the U.S., we charge them a 2.5% tariff. If we make a car in the U.S. and sell it in Europe, they charge us a 10% tariff. Make a car in China, sell it in the U.S., we charge a 2.5% tariff. They charge a 25% tariff. Now, the result of that is that our cars are very expensive over there, so they don't buy very many. Their cars are cheaper over here, so we buy more. So money flows out of the country. We have this large negative balance of trade. President Trump said to every one of the trading partners, listen, I want you to come and renegotiate these. They're not fair to U.S. manufacturers. Every trading partner was in no rush to do that because the terms were so favorable to them. So what does a business person do? Now, remember, President Trump is not a politician. He's a business person. What does a business person do when you have a reluctant trading partner? You create a sense of urgency. So he puts tariffs on all of our trading partners and devastating tariffs. And as a result, Mexico and Canada have signed new trade deals. South Korea has signed a new trade deal. Japan is talking with us about a new trade deal. The European Union said they'll work toward a zero tariff policy. And finally, since Richard Nixon normalized relations with China, they're finally talking to us about a trade deal. So President Trump's long-term goal, I believe, is to have no tariffs on anything. Now, I don't think you'll quite get there, but that's what he's trying to get to. The technique of putting tariffs on now is used to put pressure on our trading partners to come to the negotiating table and negotiate a free and fair trade deal. We thought we had it with China a couple of weeks ago. For whatever reason, in the 11th hour, China said, well, I'm changing my mind. I'm not going to agree to all those things I said I was going to agree to. Well, President Trump said, look, new tariffs were supposed to go on China on March 1st. I delayed them for 75 days because it looked like we were making progress. At the end of the 75 days, we didn't have a deal. That was May 10th. And as a result, I'm putting the tariffs on. So the tariffs will cause some short-term pain, especially since China has retaliated with tariffs on our agricultural sector. So they'll be hurt. Some Chinese goods will be more expensive. So if Americans continue to buy the relatively cheap, that is inexpensive, Chinese goods, they'll be a little more expensive. But these tariffs and this trade war we're in is hurting China far more than it's hurting the U.S. Remember, China put tariffs on food So now food is now more expensive in China. That'll hurt our agricultural sector in the short term, but the Chinese now have to pay more for food, and I think that's going to hurt them more and put pressure on the Chinese government to come to the bargaining table and come up with a resolution. I further believe at the G20 summit meeting, which is in June, I have a feeling people are going to get together and start talking about this. I don't know if they'll reach an agreement at that time, but I think we'll be making significant progress to what President Trump wants, which is free trade that's fair to both sides.
Dr. Michael Busler joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Dr. Busler, you're talking about in the short term, there's a lot of pain, but you have the media highlighting the short-term pain, the media critical of the president's policies. Is it possible? I mean, you teach kids. You're a writer. You're an economic expert. But philosophically, can Americans think of anything like they did in the old days, deferred gratification versus the world we live in today, which is instant gratification?
I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I certainly hope that people will be a little more farsighted and start to look at what President Trump has done and the results that he's been able to achieve. And you're right, people want instant gratification today. This problem has been going on for decades. NAFTA was signed in 1993. The agreements with China go back even further than that, and they've been taking advantage of us for all of these years. Somebody has got to stand up to these our trading partners, especially China, and say, listen, we're not going to do this anymore. A politician would be very reluctant to do that for just the reasons that Trump is facing now, that a politician is more concerned with not necessarily long-term solutions, but am I going to be able to win the next election? President Trump is not a politician. He will confront these problems, and he's also, in all due respect to him, he's also not the best communicator. If he would phrase some of these things, I think, a little differently and explain to the American people in a little more clear language what he's doing, I think Americans would be more sympathetic. I also believe that in spite of what the mainstream media is saying, I believe that much of America is in support of what President Trump is doing. Even in the agricultural sector, they realize there is pain that they're going to have to go through. Now, President Trump has tried to minimize that pain by passing this farm bill to try to help the agricultural sector. But I think even the farmers realize that, look, if we can get through the next year or so and finally get this resolved, then well into the future, there'll be markets for our goods, and it will benefit us well into the future.
Dr. Busler, if people want to get your information from you and your thoughts, what can they do?
So my Twitter account is at MBUSLER. That's at MBUSLER, at MBusler. I also have a Facebook page. It's called Funding Democracy. So if you're on Facebook, just in the search bar, put Funding Democracy, and you'll end up at facebook.com/Funding Democracy. And every one of my columns is listed there.
Thank you,
if you
sir.
want to follow me, I'd be happy. Yeah.
You have a great day.
Certainly my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Busler joining us. Let's go to Sherlock in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, good morning, Kevin.
How you been?
Well, kudos to your last guest. He probably is the most articulate individual that I've heard explaining actually what's going on within the economic realm, shall we say.
Sure.
The reason I called was due to the fact I overheard briefly when you were discussing the aspect of offenders, the jail, and etc. You should know the difference between a crime and an inchoate offense. For your listeners, if anybody has a pen, inchoate, INCHOATE, offense. They can look it up in the legal dictionary, which amounts to political correctness in the policy that if you attempt can be put into jail. Now, crime is within the common law, and it's so defined to injure an individual or their property or threaten to with the immediate capacity to execute your threat. That's a crime. What you had cited, the violent offenders, absolutely. Those are common law crimes. But political correctness is an inchoate offense, and they will look it up. There were certain people within your audience, I'm sure, that will look at them and say, what the heck is this? An attempt of the attempt? And that is, quote, what people are being put into prison for. As the lady, I just caught the last couple of minutes when she's talking about the Bundys, etc., the Hammonds and such. Yes. That is when you are going against policy.
Sherlock, we appreciate it. Thank you for the call. Coming up next, does the pro-life movement in states like Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and others impact what we do here in Idaho? We'd love to get your thoughts, and I'll give you the details next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
A bill now passing both chambers of Alabama's legislature by overwhelming majority will make it a felony for physicians to perform abortions. The bill's creators intend for the law to challenge Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. Detractors like State Senator Bobby Singleton say,
I apologize to the women of Alabama for this archaic law that we passed.
Much of the opposition comes from the bill's lack of protection for cases of rape or incest, yet it does allow for termination in cases of the mother's life being at risk. Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey is expected to sign it. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Thank goodness for those crazy, passionate folks in Alabama. So will it impact us here in the Treasure Valley? We did have some controversy in the last legislative session. Joining us now with analysis, commentary, and insight is our great friend, John Mounts, who the character Sweet William is based on. Mr. Mounts, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Mr. Mounts joins us from WERC in Birmingham, Alabama, and we have worked together for many, many years, and it's always great to have a trusted source of information. So for those of us that are doing this flyover thing, what's the deal with this bill? What was the impetus of this in Alabama, sir?
It was on the heels of some of the stuff that's been going on in a lot of these red states. Georgia was passing one. Basically, everyone was involved in this in Alabama said, well, we'll do you one better. So we passed the most, well, I shouldn't say passed, but the Senate has passed it to the governor, the most restrictive bill in the nation. In fact, it would make it a felony for a doctor to perform an abortion up to 99 years in prison. The women would not be subject to the felony, just the men, or the doctors. I shouldn't say men. There's female doctors too.
Thank you for that insight that we can only get from our friend John Mounts here. So what has been the reaction?
Well, obviously, this is a very conservative state, and I can only speak from listening to the people you hear on our conservative radio station. They're obviously 99% in favor of this. The only real area that people are not entirely in agreement on is the issue of they removed at the last minute, and there was a huge fight over this. At the last minute, they removed the exception for rape and incest, and they removed that. So there's no exception for that, and that has been a real sticking point for some people who want that exception in there. But by and large, the state is in favor of passing legislation that would limit abortion. And the governor has said in the past that she was also very pro-life. However, she has not said whether she would sign the measure yet.
And that will be determined. So let's take a look at some of the controversial comments. Again, we're here in Idaho, so a lot of people aren't familiar with the Yellowhammer state that is Alabama, but it is leading the national news. I'm sure you're getting a lot of attention, but a state representative that I covered in my day working with you in Alabama, still there, Representative Rogers made some controversial comments that really seem to get the ball rolling concerning women and kids dying, and we're going to kill kids anyway. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, so you're talking about John Rogers when he made the comment, quote, I'm paraphrasing. You can either kill him now or kill him later. Was his exact words in terms, and he's a representative. So early on when this was being debated in the House, he said, "Well, there's a lot of these unborn babies, and if we don't abort them now, sooner or later they're going to go to the electric chair. They're going to go through the criminal justice system. They're going to commit crimes, and then we'll be killing them anyway. So we might as well save the time and just go ahead and kill them." And he repeated that. It's not one of those things we walked back. He repeated it over and over again. In fact, our very Democrat-leaning Senator Doug Jones, and that's a whole other story, he even called out John Rogers for the comments. And then John Rogers doubled down by saying that Donald Trump Jr. should have been aborted. So he's not one to shy away from controversy on this thing. And then Bobby Singleton.
Right. But there was no condemnation besides Senator Doug Reelect Me Jones. I mean, the state Democratic Party, this guy's saying that kids are going to get killed anyway. They're going to be criminals, and they might as well be aborted.
If it were anyone else who would have said that, there would have been calls for his ouster. But he's been there for so long saying things like that and worse for so many decades. It's just one of those, everyone kind of rolls their eyes and says, that's just John Rogers. That's the kind of thing he'd say.
Amazing. John Mounts joining us from Alabama, from the Alabama Radio Network. Kevin Miller here, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. So you'll figure out whether or not the governor will sign. Obviously, the ACLU will challenge. From what we hear, and, sir, if you could give us your perspective, there'll be a lot of court challenges, and the proponents really are using this to goad the ACLU to get this to the Supreme Court. Is that what you're hearing?
That's exactly right. Like that clip you played from Evan Brown a moment ago, the idea was for this thing to be incredibly strict so that it would go all the way to the Supreme Court and hopefully that's the writer's hope, is it would overturn the 1974 Roe v. Wade decision.
Finally, Doug Jones, he's running for re-election. Obviously, we care about that because it would be, if he is ousted, it would be another Republican seat. We hear rumblings, and believe it or not, Roy Moore has a following here in Idaho. He has a national following. Like you, having covered him for years back in the day, he's thinking about running again. You heard anything more about that?
Yes, I heard. In fact, I was just speaking with someone yesterday about that off the record, but I guess I'm on the radio right now. But off the record, he is thinking about running strongly about entering the race again. And if it's really the only thing that could possibly put Doug Jones back in office for another 6 years, or for a full term of 6 years, because the only reason we're all referring to him as the accidental senator, because there's no way that red state Alabama would have ever put a Democrat in Washington in a Senate seat had it not been for the disaster that was the Roy Moore candidacy. So if he gets the nomination, and we're all hoping he won't, if he gets the nomination, then he may be defeated. Although, I don't know if you saw this, John Rogers, the guy who made that comment, he has said he's going to run against Doug Jones now on the Democrat side.
Yes, the unique Representative Rogers. We remember him well. John Mounts, we always appreciate. So if you had to take a bet, will the governor of Alabama sign it? And then we'll be having a lot of fights in the courts going to the Supreme Court. Yay or nay, do you think?
She will.
All right.
I believe she will.
John Mounts, we sure appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Our great friend John Mounts with that live report from Alabama. So how does this relate to Idaho? You know, we had our own controversy concerning the last legislative session where you had Representative Scott bring up a bill that was tabled in committee. Now you have heartbeat being passed in Georgia, being passed in Utah. What's the laws in Idaho, and how important is it? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. It comes down to how conservative we are. We like to say we're the reddest of the red states. Is that the same when it comes to being a state proudly pro-life? Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio time is 8:28. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning here. KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, your reaction to what we heard concerning what's going on in other states. What about Idaho when it comes to being pro-life? Plus, other news going on that we have to cover. The military exploring the plan to deploy 120,000 troops to the Middle East. And if you have relatives in Iraq and they're civilians, they're coming home soon. We'll explain next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. And rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Quickly to Doug in Mountain Home. Good morning, Doug.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, I just, you get to thinking about with the kids and abortion and stuff. Man, I used to think, I'm not going to say I used to think it was all right, but I sort of used to think that it was the woman's choice. But ever since I read, and this may sound goofy, but it isn't to me, I read that little book, Heaven is for Real, and the mother in there had a miscarriage, and that little boy met his sister that was the miscarriage in heaven. So that right there told me God knows how to take care of everything, Kevin. I mean, God did not make any mistakes in children. Where that guy from Alabama, Doug Jones or whatever, is talking about, well, Eric Trump should have been aborted. Hey, you're just talking, and I can get that way. You're just talking mean, And I read a story one time, Kevin, I heard it on talk radio, and it had to have been this station, but it was a long time ago, and I'll try to get it quick. But there was a guy that ended up being the governor 2 times in either Virginia or West Virginia, and he had no father. His mother had him illegitimately, and that was back in the 40s when that wasn't even looked upon. I mean, she was really looked down on. And the pastor at his church cornered him and told him, he said, son, you hold your head up high. You have a father, and he's in heaven, and he loves you. And that kid became governor of that state for 2 times. So that thing about they're always going to be, we might as well kill them now because they're going to be criminals. No. So that's my look on it, Kevin. Thank you for what you're doing for the rescue mission. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you, Doug. God bless.
Yeah, God bless you. Bye.
Bye. John Decker, live from the White House from KIDO Talk Radio on Fox News Radio. Good morning, John.
Hey there, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Not bad. The China drum beats continue. We've got the people going out of Iraq. We've got the Iranian situation. Boy, I long for the days of reaction to the Mueller report. A lot going on today.
Yeah, a lot going on in terms of foreign policy for the president today. And the president indicating yesterday that he's in no rush to come to some sort of an agreement as it relates to trade with China. The next time the president will meet with President Xi will be in late June, about 6 weeks from now. That'll be at the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan. And the hope is that the president comes to some sort of an agreement face-to-face with President Xi at that time.
Is the pressure getting to the president at all? He seems to kind of soak this all in, and I'm trying to think of the last time he and Chuck Schumer agreed on something.
Well, that's a good point. Chuck Schumer has indicated that he strongly supports the president in terms of the tough line that he's taken with China. Hey, listen, I need to go right now. I'm very sorry to cut you short. I need to meet with someone from the White House. But, Kevin, I apologize, and I will speak with you, I'm sure, very, very shortly.
Have a good day, John. We appreciate you, brother.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There we have it. He's got to go to the White House. He's in the White House, actually. And let me just explain something to you, thanks to our association with the Big Fox. One of the original Fox radio stations in the country was really brilliant of the people that were here at the station before I was to associate with Fox News. Working for Fox News stations, you get access to people in the White House. So here we are. Maybe maybe you're stuck on the connector. Maybe you're going, man, I'm getting my windshield redone today and it's going to rain. Or you're taking the kids. Maybe you're looking for pennies to help out the Boise Rescue Mission. John Decker's, his office is at the White House. If you go to our website, or our YouTube channel, there's so many places to go to. Of course, a lot of people tell people to go to places, right? Anyway, you'll see John Decker's office on our YouTube channel, KIDO Talk Radio. So he's got to meet with people at the White House. We meet with Tea Party Bob, publisher of the Gem State Patriot. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. Interesting show this morning. Having a lot of fun listening. I just have a few comments this morning. I tend to agree with Holly on the rehab of criminals and the fact that the more and better jails do not always serve society except to keep criminals off the streets. You know that when I was in the fencing business, many of my crew were young men that had run afoul of the law and were on probation.
Now, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't know this about you. Not only did you work on Wall Street, not only have you done other stuff, but you were the guru of fencing. So I know where I live in Star, your crew did my fences. What other communities did your fencing company work in? You might have a fence that was done by the czar of fencing. I mean, we all have fences here in the Treasure Valley. What other places all over?
I don't even remember half of them. It's so long ago.
All right.
It was a lot of fence, though, I'll tell you that. But, you know, these kids that I hired, they ran afoul of the law. They were on probation, and it took a bit more supervision to work with them. But, you know, in the end, they had a chance to better themselves, earn some real money, and learn something. Now, putting people in jail does not necessarily mean they're going to come out better than when they are released. And in fact, the recidivism rate is uncomfortably high, especially for those kept in for lengthy sentences. Now, we all remember the CCA that had control of our prisons in Idaho with the gladiator battles and a huge scandal with the guards putting in for overtime and not showing up for work. You know, that scandal was swept under the rug by a previous Governor Otter, and no real investigation ever took place to find out what it really cost the taxpayers. Now, we need to find programs for those offenders that are not a threat to society that will bring them back into conformity as working citizens that are contributing instead of costing society by their incarceration for many years. Now, bigger prisons are not the answer, but it is the easiest way for our elected public officials to get rid of the problem by locking them up. This lock them up method has become a huge failure considering the recidivism rate we have here. So how about trying to rehabilitate these people who have gone off track with educational programs and psychological consulting to help them recover and become citizens who contribute to society instead of taking from society? The other thing I wanted to touch base with is, as you know, I'm moving. I want to make everyone aware about what is going on and what is going to happen to taxes here in the Treasure Valley. Because I just got my closing statement on my house and got to look at what my taxes are going to be for 2019 or would be. And it's an increase of 25%. Now, we have to remember with the rise in housing prices, we forget that housing prices go up, the taxes go up because of higher valuation. The Treasure Valley is going to become a very expensive place to live if our government spending continues to go unchecked. When we see what is happening in Boise, with a mayor looking to put up a new $85 million library and a $100 million baseball stadium, one only has to wonder how we're going to pay for all these expensive goodies. We are now looking at a library in Meridian, which will be on the ballot this month. You know, it's fine when we have lots of people moving in and we create new tax rateables, but when we don't charge enough in impact fees to pay for the infrastructure to handle a new resident, it catches up with us, with more road congestion, the larger classes in our schools, and mounting water and sewer problems. So things need to change if we don't want to become overtaxed and overcrowded and very dysfunctional like California.
No, you're leaving.
That's about all I have to say.
I mean, you're bailing on us.
Well, hey, look, you know, I mean, I'm trying to be sensible about this whole thing. Until they change what's going on down here, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to pay higher taxes and get less services.
You can't
would you say that?
You can't solve the problem by running away from it.
Well, I think you can in some cases. You go to places that are doing their services properly.
You know, by the way,
they are charging lower taxes.
By the way, are you going to be appearing next week in your last Treasure Valley appearance for Miller's Mission?
I'm sure we can make time for that.
Well, no, that's not a yes or a no. Are you coming? Are you going to be there? Are you bringing your chair?
I will definitely be down at the Walmart. So,
well, that's good that your last Treasure Valley appearance at the Walmart in Nampa, Garrity and Franklin.
You can count on that, my friend. I will be there.
Well, I know Terry's looking forward to it, so thank you.
Oh, gosh, I can't wait.
Thank you, sir.
Have a wonderful day, my friend.
Our great friend, Tea Party Bob. Tess in Boise. By the way, if you would love to join Miller's Mission, KIDOTalkRadio.com. We're collecting pennies, dollars, cents, anything to help the Boise Rescue Mission. We sure could use your help. BoiseRM.org. That's BoiseRM.org, or our website for more details on how you can join the Penny Patrol and make a difference. Good morning, Tess.
Hi, good morning. Hey, I'd like to put in a big pitch for a yes vote on the new jail. And here's the reason, is when you listen to, when you listen to the staff that came in last week that you interviewed, one of the things that they mentioned is the term programming. So programming means that you're providing instructions, guidelines for people for drug and alcohol issues, abuse. I mean, because what happens is when people think of the criminal element, what they do is they think it's a clear container and all the marbles look alike. But when you dump the container out, surprise, surprise, they look like steelies, cat eyes, trilights, sunbursts, bumblebees, Clearys, all those different types of marbles. And you have to have a jail system that sorts all those out. They put them into a pie, and then they figure out where to send them. But when you have an overcrowded jail, you have no room. You don't have classrooms. You don't have one-on-one counseling rooms. You have nothing that is available for these people. So if you want to take the element of crime, consider the fact that these people have committed millions of dollars. So they're in this of damage to different people. So they're in the center of the tornado. But you know what? They look around and they can't see all the devastation around them that's cost money. So I say yes, give them the jail. Because the reason people don't want the jail is they're concerned about their taxes. Well, put it to good use. Sort the marbles out. And by the way, you know what? Abortion doesn't get rid of the criminal element like a lot of people think. Because I can recall talking to a girl standing there in her cheerleading outfit from Capitol High School who was at Planned Parenthood with her mom to talk to them about what? Getting an abortion.
Indeed.
Give them the jail. They need it. Let them sort those elements out because society can't.
I don't know. I mean, it's $100 per 100,000 in property value. I don't see people paying for it.
Well, it's because they don't quite understand what the system is all about. There's so many different elements to it. You know what the Bundys faced was horrific. You're talking private prisons. You're talking no bail. You're talking constitutional issues versus different types of killers versus different types of sex offenders versus, people live their pain. And that's what you see in the jail system. It's like for people who, if you are heavily overweight, you weigh 4, 5, 6, 700 pounds, you're living your pain from something. If you're an addict or an alcoholic, you're living your pain from something. And you can't open those doors for them unless you help them find out what that's from. And unfortunately, the jail system is one of them. So maybe you should talk to the individuals who came on your program and say, what kind of programming are you going to have available? Because when I talk to people in Canyon County, that's what they want.
Right. I'm with you on that, but there are only so many limits to what we can do here. Again, I think the jail situation, the prison system, there's a lot that needs to be looked at. A lot of good people in law enforcement. Tess, thank you for the call.
Morning.
All right. 580-5436. We do appreciate those folks from both sides coming in and talking to us here. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up next, we do want to talk a little bit more about the jail situation. That's one thing. Although, is it really top of mind? What are you more concerned about? The prisoners breaking free or deploying 120,000 troops to the Middle East? Let's discuss next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
The State Department ordering non-essential staff at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad to leave Iraq, blaming what a spokesperson calls an increased threat stream. The U.S. has been warning in recent weeks of threats from Iranian forces, although no details have been given, and Iran calls the claims an attempt at psychological warfare. Separately, Iran's supreme leader saying no one is seeking war, but also appearing to issue a veiled threat that it would be easy for Iran to begin enriching uranium to levels suitable for nuclear bombs. Simon Owen, Fox News.
And more on that in a minute. By the way, I do want to thank Chris, who emailed in, Kevin, I'm not going to vote in a $100 over $300 for me, permanent tax increase for the jail. A bond I'd vote for, but no level is ever reduced. That's Chris in Nampa. Thank you, Chris. Just more briefly, it's fascinating to hear so many people give their views on incarceration. On one hand, we have people that say we should get rid of putting people in jail. Other people saying we should get rid of people that are nonviolent offenders. I mean, we've had people with straight faces calling in saying to me, Kevin Miller, jail doesn't work. Okay, if somebody robs you, beats you up, or something worse, you're actually, you want these people to not have any consequences? On the other hand, we hear all the time of unsafe conditions and everything else. You've got the headlines screaming right now that they're letting prisoners out. That's not anything new. That's been going on for quite some time. And the citizens of Canyon County and coming up soon in Ada County will have to decide whether or not that's a good thing, whether or not you're going to let people out that should be in jail. And it's fascinating, the campaign that, you send out the press release and they cover it and everything else. Nothing ever changes. A supermajority is going to be a challenge. And if this one goes down, they're going to keep going until they get it. I think you have to have a legitimate discussion. And I think what you have to do is you have to have people that are for the jail and people against the jail coming together. And I think speaking self-servingly, you have to spend money to get your message out. Town hall meetings are nice, but if town hall meetings got governors elected, you'd hear no ads on the radio. Right? If levies were important, and I guess they're doing something in Meridian with the library now. If a supermajority, you need to spend money, not just on earned media, but paid media. And that's a little inside, but that's really what it comes down to. Right? So maybe we can bring both sides together. Right now, that currently it doesn't seem that it's going to happen. And especially for the folks that have to work and live in that facility. Most importantly, the people that work there. We talk about police officers, but corrections officers that have to put up with those folks. I will tell you, having done a couple shows from the Canyon County Jail a few years ago, and then going into that tent where now there are 3 police officers, but there's like 200-300 people in that tent. If you haven't been by, you can drive by and see it. I mean, and they're not the best behaved, right? They're not the best behaved. We'll continue our coverage on that one. So, as you just heard Simon Owen talking about the U.S. military, here's the scary situation going on in the Middle East. First of all, the president is not messing around, number one. Number two, we're telling people to get out of Iraq, not Iran. Telling people to get out of Iraq because it's going to get crazy in Iran. Iran, whatever you want to call it. Now we're learning the U.S. military is exploring a plan to deploy 120,000 troops to the Middle East. Now, because the crazy Iranians, they're crazy Iranians. Why is everything going to heck? Because for the last 20 or 30 years, if you heard Dr. Bustler earlier, our guest that we had on, the trade deals favor everybody but America. And if you heard the president yesterday, we played the clip, we always win. Well, with him we do, not with thank you, Obama. George Bush, he was a good man. He was surrounded by people that didn't have the best interest of America. Oh, to be a superpower, you have to apologize for being strong. No, you don't. We always win. Thank goodness we have a president that says that. We always win. The White House is accusing Iran of sabotaging ships in the Persian Gulf. The Navy has sent the USS Abraham Lincoln to the Gulf. Pray for those sailors. Pray for those Marines, those Air Force guys and gals. It's a showdown that happens. Sooner or later, you have that big fight. You have that big blow up. It's been years in the making. We have tried to pacify the Iranians. Appeasement. That's really been our foreign policy since 1979 with the crazy, wacky, zany, murdering Iranians. Appeasement. And it's been that way with the Chinese. It hasn't worked. It has to stop. So here we have the president sending the Abraham Lincoln. A deployment of 120,000 troops would be the largest since the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. You mean liberated Iraq, Associated Press. National Security Advisor John Bolton said the U.S. is not seeking a war with Iran, but are fully prepared to respond to any attack. Remember when they took our sailors captive? Remember when they attacked our ships? And what did we do about it under Mr. Wonderful? Thank you, Obama. Nothing. Are we going to be bullied forever? Are we going to allow this country that harbors and sponsors state terrorism to continue? I don't think so under this president. That's a good thing. Traffic and weather together. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Good morning, Dave.